I'm waiting for Don.
Sure, well, yeah, 2 minutes back.
Hey, Lacy, just to warm you up, we're 2 minutes
really
out. Can you tell us a story about what it's like to be a team?
Stop.
Now it's a little less of a footprint.
I think I'm gonna do this.
Really.
By Friday, if it's still here.
Like just like, how long are you staying for it or you finish it out?
Like for this week, you mean? I'll be here. I'll probably go home Wednesday. I have my 311 final tomorrow, but that's that's all I have left. So I was like, well, I'm looking for a 7 to all home Monday and Tuesday. And then I probably won't go home, but I'll try and watch the other ones. Are you here? You're here all week.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I already had that during my presentation, but your future students are gonna thank us. Yeah. They're like the reason I
That's how you heard them. I didn't know that my husband was
I'll
delivering until your email came.
Oh, really?
No, I'm like, I didn't go to this. My husband's like, oh, that's what my
order.
I have to
Four
like talk to the
chicken
site.
strips, french fries.
Like, wait, what, do I even know you?
Because the thing is, I knew he created it. So I heard him like yammering about it, but he never said, okay, I'm gonna need you to like.
I
be
actually
here."
had chicken strips this morning.
We're usually pretty good about thinking, like when it involves email.
Good afternoon, folks. Well, thank you for coming here to please.
So thank you.
We're going to celebrate Lacy Walker and her journey. As she presents her final presentation. She has 3 questions she's going to answer. They're plastered around the room. She's going to ask how does she or who does she aspire to be as a teacher? What opportunities does she engage in to become a better teacher? And how's she going to maximize her internship this spring at Honesdale High School with Miss Kayla Poley, who I see online. I'll ask that our online audience, please be prepared to ask questions at the end, as well as our face-to-face group. We will ask for questions at the end of her time. We want to thank you for being here. Lacy, they are all yours.
Do I need to like unmute or something or are we good?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, let's that. All right, so welcome everybody. Before I get started, I want to thank you guys all for coming. And welcome to the people in the room. So I have my parents, Jerry and Michelle Walker here. So they're pretty cool. I also have Lori, one of my seed semester professors, and Dr. Melanie Willis Foster, who is one of my internship bosses, and some of my roommates and friends. So thank you all for coming out today. All right, touch the button. Ready for the next one?
Sometimes it does these things. Is it green? When you push a button, does it turn green?
No. I told you I was hurry. Technology
She
won't
didn't
fail.
say this. She said it's
Oh, just kidding.
Sometimes it just needs a second or two to say.
Okay, so, before I get talked to you for 30 minutes about myself, I feel like you probably should know who I am and why I'm here. So some fun things about me is like I love the outdoors and I love staying active. So I actually got to play rugby for 3 years. So you can see this little cute picture with my mouth guard popping out of my mouth in the bottom corner. Along with that, if I had to describe myself in a short cliche saying, I would say faith, family, and farming. Those are what's really important to me. And then, so how did I get to teach ag? Well, I didn't actually have an FFA program in high school, so I had 4-H. So you can see down there with my little, yes, go 4-H. Down there with my little market goat my senior year. And then where my roots of ag really run deep is my family farm. So you can see my grandparents up there. I would be a 3rd generation on my family's farm. And then there in the middle, we have a hunting farm. And so I was able to get that kind of aspect of ag and conservation around that. And got to really work with some really cool people through that opportunity. So who do I aspire to be as a teacher? And there's my absolute cute and gorgeous cohort. So we love that. All right. So if you flip to the next page in your packet, just flip it up. It's upside down. You flip it the wrong way, but you can see my teaching philosophy and my mission and vision statement. And so on there, you can see I want to incorporate the 3 components of the 3-circle model. So starting with classroom instruction, that's the obvious one. That's what every high school teacher has to do. You have to teach in the classroom. But then what makes ag ed different is the FFA and leadership development part, and the SAE, which stands for supervised agriculture experience. So when I bring those in through FFA events, CDEs and LDEs, that's going to give them a chance to build career skills. And then when I bring in SAE, that's gonna give them a chance to really experience agriculture in their real everyday lives and how it really works in the industry. Through that, I wanna do that through collaboration and teamwork. So you're not gonna work by yourself for the rest of your life. And so having those students build those skills in my classroom is gonna be really important. Also learn by doing. That's gonna be probably the staple of my classroom. The more reps with material a student gets, the better they're gonna learn that material. And so in order to do that, if we can do a hands-on activity or watch a lab or go to a tour or go to a equipment dealer or something like that, they're gonna learn that material a lot better than if we just sat and clicked through PowerPoint slides. And the last thing is a positive learning environment. So if you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom levels are like safety and food and nutrition and belonging, all before you can get to the fact where they actually learn something. So if people come into my classroom and they don't feel welcome, they don't feel loved, and they don't feel like they could be supported here, they're not gonna learn. And so that's where the positive learning environment comes in. So as far as classroom management goes, we have these cute little posters. And so as far as classroom expectations, you can read these, but I really focused on keeping them positive. So I didn't say, do not drink and eat in my classroom. Do not be on your phone. I started with be respectful, because if they're gonna be respectful to me and I'm respectful to them, we're not gonna be on our phones while I'm talking or while your classmates are talking. Two other really important ones were challenge yourself and adapt to change. So things are not perfect and things are not gonna always go perfect. So if you can just tackle that and figure out how to adapt, that's gonna be a really big important part of being in the real world and my high class. As far as classroom procedures go, the main point to sum these up is come in when the bell rings and be ready to go. So get your stuff out, do your bell work, complete those kind of tasks, and be ready to learn and tackle the day. Also, like, ask permission when you need to leave class is also one. And then as far as consequences go, I have like a 4-step process. Hopefully we will not be getting to the 4th step, but we're gonna start with a verbal warning. Everyone makes mistakes, so if I can just correct that pretty simply with like a, hey, let's not do that again, that's awesome. And then I'm gonna go to a student conference. Chances are there is something that might be going on at home or something that kind of caused them to do that. And so if we can try to get that solved without going to another step, that would be important. Then I'll contact the parents. Hopefully, maybe they have some insight how I can fix this. And if none of that goes well, I'm going to go ahead and call the office and get them referred there. Along with classroom management, I think that supporting positive behavior is going to be my #1 discipline tactic. So I can encourage like whatever they do that's positive, making a point to encourage them in that, rather than pointing out all the negatives. They're going to chances are just not have as many discipline issues. When we think about like what my dream program looks like, here's my model curriculum. So on my first year, students would take an intro to ag class, and then from there they could kind of pick a pathway, if you will. So my first pathway would be like animal science. You have animal science, livestock judging, and vet science. So thinking about animal science, I would teach things like reproduction, digestive, basic animal care, different breeds of the industry. Then we're going into livestock judging. We probably go through for each unit just have a different breed, and we talk about how to break that down, how to judge each breed and each species. Going to vet science, we talk more technical terms. We talk about pharmacology, physical exams, how to manage record keeping in a vet clinic. Next down, we have our plant science pathway, which we have plant science, which is probably just an introduction. Hopefully we'll have a greenhouse where we talk about pest management, greenhouse diseases, how to germinate and propagate plants. Horticulture, we do some floral design and how to maybe even manage a flower business. And then ag business and greenhouse management would capstone that, where we would talk about a lot of ag business, but really how it relates to the horticulture industry. Then down to my last pathway, which is kind of a catch-all. I have 2 ag mechanics courses where we cover things like welding, plumbing, electrical wiring, woodworking, etc. And then in food science, we talk about food preservation, and then like butchering, how to make jam, etc. like that. Also, along with this, I'll talk about this in a little bit. I had to make a lab integration plan, and so my dream facility would be a big barn for the livestock judging and animal science pathway, pretty much, where we had a bunch of pens for cattle, goats, sheep, and pigs, and then also a big area and a wash rig to help work with those on a daily basis in our classroom. So for the lab integration plan, I also made this $15, well, it only cost me $5, but $15 project of a horseshoe boot rack. So you just slide your boot on in there. And so bringing this into my class, it could cost depending on if they get the materials donated or if they have to buy them. But I kind of let it up to the students. So they could just make one boot rack. So they could only have 2 horseshoes here and then we just take off the rest. So that would cut down on cost. But I'd also go to my local farriers, local horse farms and get my horseshoes donated, which is how I got my horseshoes. And then they would all really have to do is pay for rebar or, go out back and see if they can find it in a pile of metal. And also then you'd have to paint it. So mine only costs about $5, but my students then again could also kind of adapt it to whatever their price range is and what they would want out of it. I also think it's a really cool project because you don't have exact measurements. So every horseshoe is different. And so when you are measuring these out and laying these out, you have to really measure the horseshoes as a whole to figure out how long the rebar needs to be. So kind of giving my students a little bit more of a challenge, like here's not a set list of directions where you have to just cut everything to 12 inches, I think will be a place to challenge them. Talking about SAE integration, I talked about how this is important for them in order to get real world experience outside the classroom in agriculture. So in order to do this, all my students are going to be required to have an SAE, whether that is working at a local farm, working at a greenhouse, or even maybe taking care of the trout in our classroom, whatever that may be, I want them to be able to have one. In my intro to ag class, I would teach an SAE unit so that they're able to really understand what that is and find their passion for it. Because I want them to want to do their SAE and not be just another thing they have to do to get a grade. Also potentially doing like SAE Fridays. So, hey, let's come in, let's work on our SAEs, or hey, let's research a new SAE this Friday, just to kind of incorporate that in my classroom. I did mention it was part of a grade, and doing SAE visits I think will be important as another way to connect with the students and build rapport, but also to check in and see how they're doing. Going on to FFA integration. So I think this is another really big part. I also would make it a grade, not necessarily they come to FFA events, but they're doing some sort of leadership development events. So if they don't want to come to FFA, no worries. Prove to me how you're building career skills for the next step in your life. Along with this, I think students are the best recruiters. So I can help get a diverse group of students, and then they can just go out and recruit for me. Because if we're doing fun things that they're enjoying, they're going to tell their friends. And then make things tailored to my students' interests. So if everyone's real big into horticulture, I'm not going to force them to go to a machine shop when that's just not what they're going to enjoy. So while I have to learn what they need to learn in class, making my FFA events tailored to my students' needs will be important. All right, now we're going to watch the video. Oh, cool.
Hey everybody, my name is Miss Carter and I'm here with Miss Walker and Miss Reed. And we're the 3 teachers at the Real Deal Ag program. In our program, we focus on 3 main components, including classroom instruction, community engagement, and FFA and SAE. Stay tuned to find out more.
Let's talk about SAEs, Supervised Agriculture Experiences, where our students are able to do jobs, projects, etc., all focused around real-life agriculture. Here, one of our students is carrying in his feed for his breeding does. He raises these goats and monitors the reproduction of the herd and helps show them in the summertime. Here, another one of our students works for a conservation organization that monitors deer. He's checking the cameras to see about the deer populations in the area. They also monitor tree health and look for buck rubs on the trees, and then he's recording his data here. Another one of our students, she raises market steers. Here she's cleaning out the feeder, and she will sell this animal for 4-H and FFA over the summer. Another one of our students is able to work on a farm and run equipment like this and get practice with heavy equipment before and after school.
Now we're going to learn about how our chapter gets involved in the community. Our chapter loves to do volunteer events such as canned food drives, where we go around to community members, knock on their doors, and ask for non-perishable items that we are able to donate to the food bank. We also love to do community events where we go around and visit with community members, either that are involved in industry, alumni, or just other people that like our chapter. We have a strong FFA involvement and participate in a lot of different CDEs. Some of these CDEs might include wildlife and fisheries, forestry, ag mechanics, and leadership development events like speeches. Our students love to participate in a wide variety of CDEs that test all of their knowledge and skills. Here are some highlights from some of our CDEs. The first one you're seeing is wildlife and fisheries. Our students have to go out and identify different wildlife, and to do what better way to do that than to visit a great fishing spot. As you can see, the student is walking through the house and trying to find the best spot to catch the best fish. And you'll notice, here it is, the best spot for fishing. Second one the students are passionate about is forestry, where we like to test different
Thanks. Okay, so you get the point of the video. It's all about program recruitment. And so in my future program, we may not have a video exactly in that caliber, but having my students make videos around what we're doing in FFA and SAE and in the classroom are going to be helpful in recruiting new students. I'd also heavily recruit to 8th graders and 7th graders coming up into high school so they know about ag before they get to high school. Talking about community involvement and integration, one way I could do that is through community-based students instruction. So one way I might do this is building or having my students build raised bed gardens for the community, talk with local community businesses and things like that. Also, businesses that we can support as FFA will chances are support us back. So we can go to a local feed store instead of maybe, I don't know, a corporate feed store. Hopefully we can get some community involvement that way. All right. So what experiences have I had to help me become a better agriculture educator? Talking about my key AE courses. So we have 311, which Dr. Curry taught, all about FFA and SAE. So since I didn't have that in high school, that was a really important course for me to kind of understand that and like kind of drink the Kool-Aid, so they say. AE 349 with Dr. Ewing and 350. You can see us here, we're building some walls and made a real cool plumbing structure over there. And so getting some of my ag mechanics background kind of built up as we go into the spring was really helpful as well. And then AE 412 with Dr. Foster, where we kind of talked about methods of teaching and how really can I make this meaningful for my students and not just stand up there and give them information. Talking about other key courses outside of AE, Anti 201. I knew a lot of the production animal science, but learning the scientific knowledge behind it in order to relay that to my students really came together in this course. Also agronomy 28. So that course, we got to go to the actual greenhouses and do some plant ID. Since I didn't have any plant science classes, that was cool to get that aspect. And then seed semester. So it was 6 different classes and 18 credit kind of experience out at Chambers Creek. It was kind of one of my defining experiences at Penn State. We were able to travel up across New England and see a bunch of outdoor education programs. So to see like an kind of informal environment education compared to a formal education that we're teaching in was really awesome. It taught me a lot of new things. I even had to give a presentation about a tree with puppets. So that was a cool way to learn, like we can give our students kind of crazy assignments for them to present work to us, and they're gonna have fun with that. So here you can see some cool pictures from that. I was a big time bird watcher while we were up there. But that was a really cool experience as well. Talking about minors and certification, so I do have an INTAG minor. With that, that really helped me learn about global agriculture and like how does that relate at a local level, and how can I just bring like a simple bell bringer or interest approach, how can I bring global agriculture into my classroom and just kind of get my students aware of that. I also have a safe driving tractor certification where I can then, students that are 14 to 15, I can certify them to be safe tractor drivers. And I also got a Need No Trade certification, which is kind of around environmental education. And so if I bring that into my classroom, that certification will be helpful. Professional development. So I had the opportunity in 412 for us to do the Inquiry Institute. So there we're doing the estrus party, which my students are probably going to think I'm absolutely insane. But this spring we're going to have a party about the estrus cycle and how cows reproduce. So they're going to love that, I hope. We're going to try that, but it was really around like how can we let our students lead our learning. So bringing just a few things to that in my student teaching, I think will be awesome. NAAE, you can see us PA folks over there. I went to a lot of cool workshops and got to connect with a lot of cool educators, and it's going to take me way past student teaching. So that was also really cool. And over the summer, I was able to go to a greenhouse management PDE to learn a little bit or more about horticulture, which is one of my weaker areas. Internships and work experience. So GTAM, which is the Global Teach Ag Network, was one of my main internships throughout college. And I really got to help connect or help work with educators and how to create programs that are really helpful for them. And so like, how do we best serve educators? It was a really cool opportunity to see like what educators need and like thinking about when I become an educator, what would I find most helpful? So it was a really cool experience. And then talking about my family farm, I was able to get like some of that more technical skills, like how do I deliver pigs? How do I deliver a cow? How do I run a piece of equipment? And then when I came to college, I was able to get more of that scientific background. So I think that will help me going into student teaching as well. Talking about how do I help diverse learners? I was able to do a few cool things. Number one, I was able to go to France and Spain with the rugby team freshman year. So you can see us in front of a castle over there. I did not speak French, so we had to bond over sign languages and some pasta. And so learning that you can connect with students that even if you don't speak the language that they speak, and just being mindful of that and trying to like connect with them and make an effort in my classroom in case they're not speaking the same language as me. C400N was a class about Indigenous people. And so just kind of learning the history around that I didn't even know about. And like a lot of times I don't know things. So like if I can just take a minute and be like, hey guys, I don't know your background, tell me about it. That's gonna help me connect with my students as well. I was able to do a culturally responsive teaching class with 412. And that was kind of cool to hear their perspective and how like just bringing in local knowledge of what's going on is also just culturally responsive teaching. It's not always about race. And then I did a learn to special needs workshop there. I was blindfolded at NAAE, and we kind of were put in the position of like, if we had a disability, how would we learn with that? How would that hinder us? And then how can we better accommodate our students? So how am I prepared to maximize my student teaching internship? Oh. One moment. Okay, back in business. All right, so I'm going to Honesdale, which is all the way up here in the northeast part of Pennsylvania, which is really cool because I said I would absolutely go nowhere more north of Pennsylvania or Penn State, and here we are. I was told it snows a lot, so that's really awesome. But I'm super excited to go there with Mrs. Kayla Coley and her program. So one cool thing is this program was built from the ground up about 5 years ago. It's a brand new program, and Kayla worked really, really hard to put it together. And so seeing how far it's come already, I'm super excited to go there. They have facilities like a greenhouse, a chicken coop, a lab area, a kitchen area for some food science stuff, and then obviously a classroom area. They also have really, really good community support. And so in these pictures, you can kind of see there's some figurines that I'm going to be able to use for teaching animal science. And then up there in the corner, you can kind of see the lab tables and the classroom space. So thinking about the chapter 339, review and evaluation of Honesdale, some strengths that I put out of the program is it really has grown extremely well in the last 5 years. They have a lot of community support and involvement, and their greenhouse facilities are extremely awesome, and I'm thrilled to get to work there and build my horticulture knowledge. Some areas for improvement, which Kayla is working on right now, is SAE involvement. And so thinking about how can we make sure our students keep that SAE after their first year. So all first year students are required to have an SAE, but some of them kind of don't keep it as active. So what ways can we encourage students to keep them active is something I look forward to working on when I'm there, as well as getting the numbers. With COVID and the way her classes fell, the program numbers look smaller than they actually are. So how can we keep those students that are not actually in a classroom, like in an actual class right now, an actual course, involved in FFA now that we're back in person and doing fun opportunities. So if you flip to the next page, next three pages in your packet, they're all colorful, and that has a breakdown of what lesson title I'm teaching every single day for my 13 weeks of full on student teaching. Along with those that I'm going to be teaching, we're going to probably do events like ACES with my FFA chapter. I'm excited to go to FFA meetings and really see how they're run, because I didn't have that experience. An advisory council meeting is going to be going on this spring, so I get to sit on that, which I'm excited about. Plant sale, which kind of terrifies me if I have to help run that, but I'm super excited to put my both feet in forward and we're going to go with it. I'm also going to get to see an ag day and potentially plan an FFA retreat for my students. Oh, I also got to go to National Convention with them. So here we got to go tour a longhorn farm, and there's a picture of the convention. And so that was kind of a cool step in the door as an event with some of my students. Talking about courses I'm going to teach. So in all the green, you can see that's all horticulture. So it'll be my first and second period. I'm teaching 3 units: plant propagation, germination, pests, and IPM, and ag business and horticulture. Then I'm going to teach animal science, which is what I'm going to teach for the longest, for 13 weeks, which will be, I'll teach animal reproduction, genetics, animal health, physical exam, and pharmacology. And then I'll teach intro to ag, which I'll teach food science and processing, ag mechanics for small gas engines. So shout out to Dr. Ewing for that one. And ag communication, business, and leadership. Here's kind of the schedule. And so what's really cool about home sale is my horticulture is periods 1 and 2. So that's a 96-minute block. And animal science is period 3 and 4, which is also 96-minute block. So I'm going to have like 2 block periods. And then period 5A is my intro class, and so that's a 46-minute period. So I'm going to get to experience a block teaching and a more traditional style class teaching. So I'm excited to have both those experiences. When I talk about organizational materials, I have done all my unit plan prep, and some of my lesson plans and my lesson plan titles there. And I'm going to store this all in my team space. I also up here have my unit binders. So in each of my classes, I have all my units printed out. My lesson plan I didn't decide to print out just because I'm going to continue to adapt those. And as we get into the spring, kind of have to change for my learners. And so I'll work on those as we go. When I talk about strengths as a teacher candidate, I feel like my biggest strength is that I'm real and relatable. So I don't walk up here and pretend that I know things because I don't know everything. And so being able to connect with my students on that level, I think that I can do very well. You can see there, I teach my life knowledge lesson with some of my freshmen. You're talking about leadership there. I have animal science knowledge. 201 really did help me with that, and I'm really interested in that. So I want to learn more. And so that's the point that I also will be able to do well at. And the last thing is experience in the industry. So I think one thing that I really am passionate about is bringing like actual experience of like real industry experience into my classroom. So things that people in the industry will actually use and not just scientific information. So how can we do this in the industry, and then why does scientific information back that up? And so my past working on the family farm and working with other people in the industry will help me there. Looking ahead, how can I do better and what do I want to do better? I want to plan and think ahead. So I don't want to wait until the night before to plan a lesson plan, because in order to ensure my students get the best learning opportunity, I want to be able to get supplies, get materials, and make sure it's well thought out for my students to learn better. I also want to increase my horticulture knowledge. So going with this big greenhouse and getting immersed in that, I think is going to be a really good experience for me. I want to get out of my comfort zone with ag mechanics. So I'm teaching a 4-week unit on small gas engines. So I think that's going to be a deep dive into that and kind of push me to teach something that I know about, but I'm not completely comfortable in. I also want to immerse myself in FFA activities. So I spoke about how I didn't have that experience in high school. So really while I'm there focusing on how are those chapter meetings run, how are those events planned, I think will help me if I get my own program one day. And I really just want to enjoy the experience. So I want to do all of these things and get better, but I want to just be able to say that I appreciated my students and enjoyed the experience while I was there. So thank you guys for coming. Do you guys have any questions?
Thank you, Lacy. Kendra will be monitoring the Facebook Live and the Zoom chat, so she'll chime in if she has questions that she can translate from that group. But we would like to transition to the questions part. I'll ask the first one, Lacy, which is you talked about your 4-H experience and the work that you've done in that space. And I'm wondering how you envision working with not just 4-H, but other community engagement folks and stakeholders in the local community, either at Holmesdale or in your future ag program. How do you intend to work with outside audiences?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I was even talking to Kayla about is putting on like a show plan for pigs. And so that's going to be called FFA members, but we're also going to bring in 4-H members, because we're not just going to take all that for ourselves. We want to share with all of our 4-H members as well. And then also when we're doing that, like having a local hog farmer come in and help give that clinic, and some local show families come in and help give that clinic. So doing things like that where it helps our students, but we also can either help benefit 4-H and bring in members of the community to help put that on, because there's a lot of extras in your own community. So kind of utilizing them is how I would do that.
Thank you.
One in the chat. It is from Taylor Foley. So excited by the home sale. This is a two-part question, so feel free to take a minute. What is one area you hope to grow in while at home sale? And then what's one thing you will do / lead to make our program better?
And I apologize, Lacy, if you could rephrase the questions, especially for the online audience, that'd be helpful.
Okay, so the first part is what do I want to grow in at home sale? And so I already gave a little bit of this of horticulture and ag mechanics, but I think another big one is how to manage SAEs. And so how to really get comfortable using AUT in that space to track their records, and like how to facilitate that is something that I want to grow in as well. And the second part was,
what's one thing you will do / lead to make our program better?
okay, what is one thing that I will do / leave in order to make our program better? And I feel like one thing is, so this is her first year teaching a block animal science course. Before she had animal care and animal science separate. And so as I'm going in, I think that I'm going to be able to bring some new activities and new perspective into her animal science course going forward on this 96-minute block, and like how can we do some more cool things with that time.
So your experience with 4-H, how can you draw from that to pull into enriching the experience of students in FFA?
Yeah, so I think that I have like a big show background. I was able to show goats, pigs, dairy, beef, and do senior exchange with 4-H. But with that, I kind of know how the shows and sales run. And so I feel like sometimes in FFA programs, the teacher might not be as comfortable with that. And so be able to highlight that if my students want to show livestock or want to raise livestock, if I don't know the information, I probably have some connections that do, and I can really capitalize on that part.
There's one online. It's from Tim from the Republic. Great job, Lacy. How do you plan to implement a work-life balance as a teacher?
That's a great question, Taylor. So I think one thing that I did this semester was that when I left on Friday, or like whether I was here, Friday afternoon, I closed my computer and I was like, I did what I did. I worked really hard throughout the week. And then I didn't look at it until like Sunday afternoon. I had my list of things from Friday that I still need to do in order to be successful for Monday. But I just took that day off. And I was like, I just simply cannot. And I mean, I'm sure there's going to be times when I have to work on a Saturday or have to do something on a Saturday, but just making time to myself a priority, whether that's 30 minutes a day or one day on the weekend, but just taking that time and saying, I need to do this to be better for my students is how I'm going to approach that in the spring and go forward.
Lacy, I have a question for you. When all is said and done, what do you want students, colleagues, administrators, parents, and community members to say about you as a student teacher?
Great question. I think to sum it up best was that I cared what I was doing, cared about what I was doing. So I cared for those students and I cared about agriculture, and I just want them to succeed no matter if they went to agriculture or they went to another career. I just want them all to know that I cared about the students and I cared about that community.
So, and I may have missed it, so I apologize, but could you highlight for me your contribution to the success of your student teaching cohort? So how did you contribute to your student teaching cohort?
Sure. So I think one thing is normally when we come in, I would make a stupid comment or spill my hot chocolate all over a desk at a banquet, kind of just lighten the mood by just being kind of a mess. So I was able to do that, but I was also able to provide some animal science background. I also was able to provide about how to make jerky based off how my mom makes jerky. So Nell, so there's kind of they share a lot of ideas with me, and so I was able to share some back with them.
Thank you.
Other questions from in front of the audience? Thank you.
Somebody took, all the 4-H questions, like, dang. I'm interested to hear how you'll integrate global concepts into your program in your classes.
Yeah, so one thing I actually talked to Dr. Foster about is I'm just doing we have aquaponics. So using the World Food Prize this year and bringing some resources in from that, because the winner was around aquaponics and aquaculture. I also think that while I don't have any teachers like courses around global ag, bringing in like as interest approaches, like global examples. So I think that's probably my biggest thing is like, hey, we're talking about this now, but like let's look at a global example of how it affects the world as a whole, and then let's talk about it locally too. I think that's probably gonna be my biggest ally, bringing global agriculture.
So Lacy, you mentioned, that you did go through a school-based ag program, so SAE, FFA, it's new to you. What are some things within SAE that you're excited to be, to instill in your students?
I think just like instilling that like there's a real industry behind what you're doing, and so like through SAE they're gonna really get experience through that, and like I think experience probably is worth anything. So like when you go into a job, if you have any kind of experience in that job, I think it's worth a lot. And so instilling through that, like reaching out to that community and getting that experience through that is going to carry you through your career. And so just kind of instilling like take the opportunity to get better at something that you're really interested about, it's going to carry you farther than you realize, even if you're not doing the ag industry. But if you say like, hey, when I was in high school FFA program, I got to work at the screen house, I got to make like connections with different people, I got to work with the community, I got to plant these plants. Even if you're going into teaching or you're going into business, that's going to look good on a resume and that experience they can talk about.
Questions from our audience?
Start with any advice that you can give to a first year AE student.
First off, this comes a lot faster than you think. I was just talking to Thomas earlier, and I was like, I was just sitting there thinking, like, I don't even know if I'm making it that far. You will. I'm making it this far, okay? But I think I was actually thinking about this. One thing that I wish I would have done sooner, it just kind of sounds like silly, but put a journal next to your bed. And so, like this semester, I would do it. And so, like right before you go to bed, you're gonna think of these crazy, weird ideas, and just write them down. Or like if you can't sleep because you have all these things you have to do, write them down in your little journal. And then I felt like I could sleep better, but also because I remember having these ideas like freshman and sophomore year when we do things. I was like, oh my God, I could do that in my classroom. I don't remember them, so I didn't write them down. So if you have like a little like journal or notebook that you can just write down like weird little ideas that when you're planning for student teaching, then you'll have that to go off of.
So bear with me, I know I make this joke a lot, but how do you think your rugby experience has affected you and will make you better teacher?
That's a really good question, actually, compared to what he normally says about rugby. Anyway, so with the rugby team, as far as like cultural background and beliefs and everything, like I was a minority on the team. So I was working with a lot of people that I didn't have experiences with in the past, and so learning how to be like friends and colleagues on that field and still disagree with things off the field, I think is what I can take into student teaching. I don't need to agree with my students and everything, but we can still care about each other. We can still work together. They don't need to know what like I believe in. We just know, we both are trying to do better for each other. And so taking that from rugby and putting that in my classroom, I think will be really valuable.
For someone that didn't grow up with an FFA program, and for students that might not have one or like be aware of it at your school, how would you describe to them like what your program is about and what you do as a teacher?
Okay. So I think the main thing is like, yes, we have this passion for agriculture next day, and that's what we're built off of. But FFA is so much more than that. And the main important part of FFA is for us to help make you a better student in order to be more successful in the future. So I think telling students like, hey, we can do all of these fun things, and they're actually going to help you in the future. Is probably the most simplest way I can sum that up.
Nothing else from the group. Lacy, we'll end you on a content question. How about that? Rose and Shining First identified 5 characteristics of highly effective teachers. Can you provide 2 of those and an example of how you intend to do that as a student teacher?
No, she needs to list all 5. She can do the example for 2.
Okay, so speak tall, So business-like is for the B, enthusiastic, opportunity to learn, or that's C, sorry. Clarity, and then O is opportunity to learn, and B is variability. So for variability, I'll start there. And all my lesson plans, like especially the 96-minute ones, I have like 70 minutes of content, but I have like activities and worksheets and PowerPoint that are going to take like 5 to 15 minutes. And so keeping my students on my toes, because they only have about probably 15 minutes of paying attention to one thing before they need to have a switch. So in my lesson plans and in my writing, switching that up every 15 minutes is how I would incorporate variability. As far as opportunity to learn and creating like just like some assessments and stuff, stopping in the middle of my lessons and doing like kind of like checks for understanding and like just asking some questions like that, giving like a thumbs up, thumbs down, medium, like little things like that. But also at the end of every lesson, I either have them turn in their lab book, turn in their whatever worksheet we're working on, or I have them do like take it out the door. So write down like 5 things you still have, or like what's one question you still have, and so that's how I would incorporate those two.
You did a great job, Lacy. Can you help me congratulate Lacy one last time? Crowd favorite so far, Lacy. This concludes the public portion of the presentation. We'll ask you to retire to 2:14 while we conduct a few more matters of business with Lacy. We would also encourage you to come tomorrow, the rest of the week. Tomorrow, Michaela, Thomas, and Nell are up from 12 to 4.